Welcome to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and I'm real happy to have with me as my guest today Dr. Duncan Harris, who is the CEO of Capital Community College in downtown Hartford. Thanks for joining me today, Duncan.
Hey, Steve, glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Now, Duncan, you and I have known each other probably longer than both of us want to admit, but how long have you been in the community college system in Connecticut?
Yeah, well, I actually started March 17th, 1996. And so I started as a test administrator over at Manchester Community College and kind of worked my way up through the ranks. And 25 years later, I'm still here.
Yeah. So you have a really strong background in student affairs and student development. So maybe tell our listeners a little bit about that part of your background and how that led into maybe being interested in a job like CEO of a college.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I'm a second generation college administrator. I think I've shared with you before, my dad was actually a president of a community college. And he's also dean of the School of Education at Trenton State, which is now New Jersey College or something like that. But yeah, so I grew up on college campuses. He'd bring me in, kind of like my kids now, which is kind of interesting, and kind of grew up in this academic space. I started once again as a test administrator, and then moved after completing my master's degree. I went to Central Connecticut State University. And worked with Dr. Jane Freed, who's an iconic figure really in student affairs, Learning Reconsidered, and all kinds of work. And shout out to Jane. And so once I completed my master's degree, I moved over into counseling. And in that space, what was interesting is that I also was tapped to coordinate academic advising, and was very involved with training faculty on all the requirements. And I got to learn the degrees, did a lot with transfer, all kinds of components. I started teaching after completing my master's, so I actually taught the communications department, and then also taught a little bit working with CIS, and I have a little bit of background in that. And so, and an opportunity, and I worked in advising, and I started my doctorate at that point. I knew I eventually would want to go into the family business in terms of administration and higher ed, and started my doctoral degree, and was just about done. I was kind of ABD working on my research, and an opportunity opened up as the associate dean of academic affairs. And interestingly, the academic dean at the time reached out and encouraged me to apply, because it wasn't a traditional route. I kind of assumed that might have been a faculty member or whatever, but she saw how I worked with faculty, how I worked, across institution, knowledge of the curriculum. I was on the curriculum committee, all these kinds of things. And I ended up being the successful candidate. I had teaching experience through adjunct work for a number of years by then. So moved over into academic affairs for 4 years. I was associate dean, and then completed my doctorate in that period, and then became the dean of student affairs, a role that I held at Manchester for about 10 years, 1 year of which I was worked on launching our systems student success center, Kresge Center that we had. Right. So yeah, that was the career path.
Yeah, so that gives you a really broad background and a real variety of experiences, both in the classroom with faculty, but also with working directly with students and advising and trying to coordinate financial aid and admissions and all those pieces. But also, like you said, being the executive director of the Student Success Center, some significant work with grants as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were two major grants that Student Success. That was a statewide grant. I mean, that was an amazing year. I really learned about what was going on nationally in community colleges. I still have friends and colleagues that I developed during that period, working with Jobs for the Future, Davis Jenkins and Rob Johnstones and Gretchen Schmidt, all these folks. And so it was a really, a eye-opening year about what's going on in community colleges, and whether that was Texas or California. There was a new center in New Jersey. We got to be very close. And so, we was introduced early on into guided pathways during that period. And from the ground floor with that, initiative. And so that was, close to almost 10 years ago now. Right. And so, so really, amazing experience. Anybody who's listening, I'd encourage you to take interim opportunities when they present themselves. I mean, there's no better way to learn and have those opportunities. Sometimes you'll get tapped, you may be full out, but at the same time, I look at my career, and there were a number of occasions where I kind of signed on to do a little bit extra, but I learned so much. I increased my network, and built some muscle mass, and but that was a great year. And then the other grant that we had at Manchester that I was very involved with was a TRIO SSS grant, and student support services, and that's first year experience, and that grant still exists there. I think they're in their second round of funding, but that's had a transformative impact on the college.
But sounds good. Well, Duncan, it's time for a short break. And when we come back, more with my guest, Dr. Duncan Harris, who's Chief Executive Officer of Capital Community College in Hartford. But you're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College, right here on WLAS, WMRD.
Your future begins here. At Middlesex Community College, you will find affordable, quality education to land the career of your choice. With over 70 options, make the decision to start now. Visit mxcc.edu to get started today.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and joining me is one of my colleagues, the CEO of Capital Community College in Hartford, Dr. Duncan Harris. And before the break, we were talking about Duncan's career trajectory and the things he's been involved with in over 25 years in Connecticut's community colleges. And Duncan, how long have you been the CEO at Capital Community College?
Yeah, actually, I just completed my third year. And so, starting my fourth year in the role, and along with you and Dr. Tanya Milner-Harley, we were the inaugural class of CEOs, I guess 3 years ago in 2018.
Okay. Now, maybe for some of our listeners, I mean, the role of a CEO is similar but yet different from being a college president. And this is part of the community colleges in Connecticut all merging into one single statewide college by 2023. And one of the things, Duncan, you and I have been told, our roles are central in the connection with the community. Yeah. I got to think there are a million things happening in Hartford that would allow you to, adapt new programs and change what's going on at the college to make it responsive to so many things happening in that city. So what are some of the exciting things you got going on there?
Yeah, I mean, community is our middle name. I think we've heard that before, and I think that with the students' first plan, if anything, I'm seeing more time for me to really dig into what the needs of the community within which we sit are, right, and to ensure that there's alignment, accuracy, and currency with regard to our programs and outreach. And so, just a couple examples. There's a lot of board membership. Recently, I joined the board of the Wadsworth. There's a lot going on there. We actually have a long-standing relationship with the Wadsworth. We actually offered classes, in the Wadsworth. Our nursing students study there each and every semester as it relates to kind of human form and anatomy. And so there's a connection, obviously, with art in that regard. And so I'm a member of the Wadsworth board. Our local workforce investment board is Capital Workforce Partners, and so I'm in my second year serving on the board of CWP, working with Alex Johnson, and that's been really a kind of a best practice in a way to ensure that we're at the table, as ideas are being generated, and in terms of responding to the workforce needs of the region. So I'm there, as we're figuring out the strategic planning for the area in representing the institution, and so there's been a few different programs, some of the funding that's come down the pike recently with CARES and HERF funding that has come in through WIBS and through the state. We've been able to deploy, training programs right away as a result, I think, in some part to that relationship, and me being, a member of, in some regard, having a foot in the WIBS board, and of course, providing leadership for the college. I'm also on the board of Food Share, and of course, we're all aware of recently some of the research and studies that have been conducted on college students and the impact of food insecurity on our students. And once again, the absurdity of thinking that I can study or learn differential equations having not eaten in 2 or 3 days is just doesn't. So, a number of us have pantries. We all have food security programs. But, I've done pretty significant work with Food Share over the years and been involved with the launching of 2 pantries, one at Manchester and one at Capitol now, and serve on the board. And it's really now, it's my apologies, it's Connecticut Food Bank Food Share. So we actually merged, and it's exciting because there's one major food pantry for food security entity for the state now by merging those 2 entities. And so now it's Connecticut Food Bank Food Share currently. So those are just a few of the examples. Very deep connections with many of the community-based organizations. So we have MOUs with the Urban League around support for reentry citizens. We have other projects right now. I've got students downstairs on the 10th floor from the Blue Hills Civic Association. And so they had a summer youth and enrichment program. And we talked to Vicki Gallen Clark and said, yeah, I've got an empty building this summer. As long as they've got their masks on, I'd love to have them on campus. And so they're using 3 classrooms, in the building and, completing their summer work experience, but then also learning a little bit about college and becoming familiar with and comfortable in their local community college. So yeah, I see us doing even more. That's part of the job that I love. I think, the opportunity to really, braid and tether the work of the college to the needs of the communities within which we exist.
Yeah. Well, and I would think, a college being in downtown Hartford, you got the whole city as your campus and what's available to you. And you mentioned a few of those things, but I think you've also been starting to tap into a lot of the needs for our trades work and bringing manufacturing back to Capitol Community College. And you also are starting a lines worker program with Eversource. It's hit the news this week, right? So talk about that.
Yeah. Well. I imagine, Steve, you can harken back to your glory days at Capitol, and when unfortunately when we moved downtown in 2002, there were some limitations to the building. Amazing building, New England's premier, department store, 300,000 square feet vertical. However, there were limitations with regard to some of the programmatic offerings. And we had a thriving manufacturing program that at the time, we couldn't support. So we jettisoned that. So that was 19 years ago that we haven't really, been engaged in manufacturing to that extent. So, but I am pleased to share in a similar fashion to the partnership Middlesex has with I think you guys at Vinyl Tech or
correct. Vinyl Tech.
Yeah, we reached out and Prince Tech said, we're glad to have you. There's a statewide agreement between the community colleges and technical schools. And so we have this week, as a matter of fact, we started our manufacturing program. We have 10 students that are starting in that, and it's an intro program, and so they'll take their theory classes on campus, and then in the evenings they'll be over at Prince Tech. And so it's been great to get back into the manufacturing business. We just launched another program with Eversource, and I think. One of the things that I think will be an advantage of the new one college is that that we'll be able to replicate or transplant programs, once we kind of stand them up locally. And so we have 15 students that are in our Eversource. They'll graduate August 12th. It's an 11-week program. They'll be teed up to be extremely competitive candidates for all of the line worker opportunities, entry-level positions that they have there. It's an amazing program. We just had a big welcome overview event at the training site in Berlin yesterday. But that's the exact type of thing where we could probably do that throughout the state.
Right.
And they have a clear need.
Yeah, no, and I think with manufacturing, I think you visited Housatonic Community College, was it, when you were trying to kind of get a template for what you might have in mind to do with Prince Tech, right?
Yeah, and at the same time, there's also a piece where, we'll start at Prince Tech, but if the need should arise, and there's a lot of federal funding, out there, and certainly a city like Hartford, based on, kind of our footprint and some of the needs, that we're a strong candidate for additional federal support for programs to, like manufacturing and for an actual space, and depending on the section of the. So we're looking at that, and a lot of stuff with clean energy that's coming down the pike. I think that that EverSource relationship is, and we also have something along linked to weatherization and insulation of existing property. So glad we're getting back in that space. I think the residents of Hartford have been clamoring for that.
Absolutely. Well, one of the programs that Capital is well known for, one of your larger programs, is the nursing program and health careers in general that Capital offers. So how's the nursing program going there? I would imagine, and today as we're emerging from COVID, there's got to be a lot of people maybe interested in this field, but also a lot of people who are exhausted from working in healthcare. So how are those programs going for you?
Yeah, Steve, I learned so much about our nursing heroes, over the course of the last year, of course. We have 16 full-time faculty and a host of adjuncts. We have, some of the largest, hospitals in the state here, and amazing partners in Trinity Health and St. Francis and Children's Medical, and of course Hartford Hospital. And so, our faculty and students are throughout all of those spaces. We have about 300 students in the two classes, and there's a freshman and a sophomore class. And they pivoted. They had to pivot also in terms of some of the things that they were able to move remote. We've increased to the betterment of the program, is my understanding, some of the simulations that we're doing, that we're able to do some things on campus now that in the past we might have had to do on site and things like that. And so we were able to move some things and actually acquire some additional equipment as a result of COVID to strengthen the learning outcomes of the students. But the need is great. When the pandemic first hit, we based on the size of we donated all of our PPE. I don't know if you harken back, the hospitals needed stuff. And so, we're good partners. But yeah, certainly our nursing program, one of our strongest programs, and the need is great. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And it's a long running program. I mean, I think it was originally a hospital-based program that then transferred to the college at some point, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we just launched a new foundation scholarship for our nursing. We have over 2,000 nursing alumni, and so we've started to really reach out to them, and we launched a new initiative to raise funding, in particular for our nursing program, for scholarships and for equipment. And part of that was we recognized how many nurses out there got their start, launched their careers at Capital. So amazing program.
That's fantastic. Well, Duncan, time for another short break. And after the break, more with my guest, Dr. Duncan Harris, CEO of Capital Community College in Hartford. You're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College here on WLAS WMRD.
I really had no idea of what I wanted to do, so I worked a lot of minimum wage jobs. And finally, I was just like, I just need to go back to school because I wanted to get a business degree. And Middlesex Community College was super convenient. I got a lot out of Middlesex. I never thought I would have reached this far with my associate's degree. It allowed me to buy a house. I was able to get married. It was a dream.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and with me today is my guest, Dr. Duncan Harris, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Capital Community College in Hartford. And Duncan and I are two of the 12 CEOs in the community college system. And Duncan, talk a little bit about the city of Hartford is sadly one of the poorest communities in the United States. And do you see sort of a special responsibility or a special relationship between the community college in Hartford and its citizens and its residents?
Yeah, I think you may have seen some of my taglines where I say that the city is our campus. right, in some regard. And I look at the pinnacles, and we educate more undergraduates, that reside in Hartford than any other higher education entity, right? So we have more than UConn or even UHart or some of the other folks. So when you look at my 900 students that are, undergraduates, that's more than any other institution. So we certainly have an obligation. I view, and that, and there's a component. We actually did some work in a study with some folks out of Harvard. There's a researcher, Anna Stansberry, who did a study and looked at the students are graduates and where they're working or their income. And they were able to determine that Capital is ranked in the top 5% of community colleges in the nation with regard to moving students up 2 income quartiles.
That's amazing.
Right. And so there's a component where, as you mentioned, depending on the index that you're looking at, Hartford might be considered the 4th or 5th poorest city in the nation based on average household income. And certain zip codes, let's say I'm in 1060, 6120, what have you, a median household income is between $25,000 and $30,000 a year, right? And however, and what you probably recognize, and you referred to my nursing program. So and I have a little over 100 students in each of those zip codes. If they come here, work hard, study, go to tutoring, have a great approach, recognize what we're doing and the support that they have, and all of a sudden they become a nurse, right? Working at a hospital a couple blocks down, working 4 days a week and with all the overtime that they want. You recognize how that what they're doing for themselves and for their families, and that they're beginning to enjoy a certain level of socioeconomic stability, right? And so we recognize that. Similarly with other programs that we have, and somebody who completes my cybersecurity degree or comes in and completes my Traveler's Edge program. We actually have, there are executives in the C-suite at Travelers now that started at Capital, right? And they came through our Traveler's Edge program. And now, so we recognize that. I think that if we, in some regard, I consider our institution an anti-poverty institution, with regard to what we're capable of doing. And so this idea of what it means to not only provide that access, but ensuring that folks have the support needed, hand up, not hand out, but to, what you and I have on this call in terms of, careers, that allow them to provide for themselves in their future. So yeah, no, we're leaning into that. I think that Harvard study, and I'll share that with you if I haven't already, but as an indicator that we're dialed in on that work and recognize what we mean to the city. We're very desirous of being a vanguard community college for the city of Hartford. And I think that's what we've been really working on and toward and have a long standing history of doing too.
Absolutely. But I think, that vision is so important to the city of Hartford, but just as a role of a community college, to be that well connected with what's happening, being connected with the major employers, the movers and shakers in town who fund scholarships and fund academic programs, and certainly, having your pulse, having your finger on the pulse of what's needed in that community. And I think, you play a really important leadership role in Hartford, but in our system too, with matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you have a whole center that's devoted to that. Yeah,
I think there's been a pivot, and you're aware of this, you're working in this space too, in community colleges in general, where we've recognized that it's often not cognitive ability that's causing students to stop out or to drop out, right? But it's non-cognitive factors in nature and a lack of, whether that's housing, security, your mental health issues. We talked about food. There could be transportation, and oftentimes a student might stop out over what to you and I might be something that we'd be able to overcome relatively easily based on but to them it is certainly life-changing and warrants stopping out of school. And so what we've decided to do was create an equity center where the concept is that a student having issues or some of the challenges can go there and find necessary support to address many of those issues that we know are non-cognitive in nature, but certainly we focus in on our partnerships. We have an amazing partnership with the YWCA, where there's support for individuals that might need help with childcare and things like that, or other supports. And so we really focused in, and that's at the heart of the Equity Center, to address some of those equity gaps or challenges that result in opportunity gaps, right? So, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think it shows that, we are certainly about being colleges. You come here to enter into an academic program to, further your educational and career goals, but also, we recognize that you're a whole person, right? You do have family and you do have obligations. Yeah,
I think that's been part of the pivot, and it's not perceived as mission drift anymore, right? And so, and don't get me wrong, I don't, don't expect my chemistry professor to be a social worker. Mm-hmm. But I do expect them, if a student hasn't been coming or is looking a little distressed, for them to say, hey, is everything all right? We do have the Equity Center. I don't know what's going on, but if you do have something, know that we're here to support you. And there's some folks in the know on the third floor that you can go get some help. So that's kind of the concept of it. And then we also house partners in there. So like I said, YW has an office in there. There's something called the Sunshine Scholars, which works with students in foster care, and they have an office in there, lactation room. So yeah, it's just a really cool watering hole for folks to get some support.
Absolutely. So as the community colleges in Connecticut merge to become one college in 2023, so Capital Community College becomes the Capital Campus, mm-hmm. Middlesex Community College becomes the Middlesex Campus, whatever our names will be. What's your vision for, say, 5 years down the road? How can this single college help foster greater partnerships between our campuses, our students, our faculty, to the benefit of everybody concerned? What's your vision?
Yeah, I think, and like you, I've been in the system for quite some time, and I do think, I don't know that we've fully harnessed, all the talent and resources across campuses, and I'm optimistic. I'm always an eternal optimist, but I do think that will be one of the byproducts of this true configuration, right? Where we're working together, and each Friday we get an enrollment report, and so instead of looking at just my college, I'm looking at it. I'm like, all right, well, our entire college went up, mm-hmm. 5,000, right, students, and I'm versus focusing solely on what my efforts are, and I do think by reorganizing in the one college structure that there'll be, that type of opportunity for us to support the state in a very different way. The students can I might, work, in Enfield, and I could take a couple classes there because it's convenient, but then I can also take a couple classes because I live down the block from Capitol, and it not being two sets of records and two applications and two, so I think there'll be some things that we can do in a very amazing way at scale. I also think with national grants, mm-hmm. and that might be the time to reach out to Bill and Melinda and say, hey, you could impact the entire state of Connecticut with the magnitude of support that's deployed, throughout the state, versus kind of some going about it alone. I'm not sure that they would respond to me just on my own. So I think there'll be some really neat, innovative things that that structure allows us to do that we could do now, but I'm not sure that we could do now, if you know what I mean. So yeah.
I think if we do it now, it's because maybe people like you and me have known each other for a long time, and we already have that built-in relationship and partnership. But maybe that's not true for us and someone who's a CEO who's from out of town. Let's say you have to. If those relationships are kind of baked into the job and baked into the structure, they're going to come a lot easier.
Yeah, they're institutionalized in a very different way. It's the means of operations, not not a happenstance or reliant on personalities, right? But
Yeah,
it's the way the organization works. So I'm very excited about it. I think I think it's going to be great for the state, and I'm a nutmegger. I've been here for I was born here and grew up here, and I think once again I'm very excited about what that's going to mean for the state of Connecticut.
Okay, so in the brief amount of time we have left, so you're on a Middlesex Community College show. I'm going to give you what's your elevator pitch to a student about going to Capital Community College? What would you tell them?
Well, you know what? Well, let me say this. I'll say that it's about fit. And my thing has always been that I want whoever the individual is to be in an institution that's right for them. And if being in in downtown Hartford, based on all the assets that we have here, or some of the unique programs, is the best fit for you, come on down. And if you need to be at Middlesex and in Middletown with my good friend and dear friend, Dr. Minkler, I know that you're in for a hell of an education there as well. So it's really more about fit. And the last thing I'll say, I know we're short on time, but it's an exciting time in community colleges. And there's a lot of there's reasons why folks are suggesting that we should be free. We have our PAC program and things like that. And so to whoever's listening, I would encourage you to check us out if you haven't already, because there's a lot going on that would be pretty confident of benefit to a lot of the residents of the state.
Absolutely. Dr. Duncan Harris, Chief Executive Officer of Capital Community College in Hartford, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Awesome.
All right. And thanks to our media partner, WLAS WMRD, on the air, 1150 and 1420 AM and 97.3 and 105.3 FM. And many thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us for another edition of Middlesex Moments. As always, you can visit us in person. Our main campus is at 100 Training Hill Road in Middletown. Please wear a face mask if you join us. Or you can also see us at our Meriden Center located at Platt High School, where we offer afternoon and evening classes 4 days a week. And of course, you can visit us online 24/7 at mxcc.edu. For everyone here at Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler, and we'll see you next week.